What's up, y'all? Welcome back to another episode of HRT. I hope your week was swell. I am super excited for you guys to see this week's guest. His name is Alex. I think the last episode, their name was Alex as well. Two Alexes in a row. That's fantastic. Alex of this week is a fitness coach for trans guys, which is super fucking cool. Alex shared his story, his coming out story. He actually transitioned from a very, very young age. He went on hormone blockers. I think he's the first guest that I've got to talk to about hormone blockers who had actually experienced it, unless I'm completely wrong and forgetting somebody. And in that case, my bad. But I found that very interesting. Stay tuned for that. Alex also shared his knowledge about fitness for trans guys. And obviously, I was very intrigued in that because I need I need me some advice. um, and yeah, he shared his story. He shared his opinions. I think Alex is a very refreshing way of explaining things and his opinions. So definitely stay tuned and go support Alex. If you need a fitness coach, go check out his shit. All of his social media handles will be linked below. Go support him and make sure you follow me at HRT Podcast on TikTok and Instagram. I post almost every single day. Subscribe to me on Patreon. Join my Discord. There will be bonus content from this episode on Patreon, so you're missing out if you don't subscribe. Other than that, that's about it. Let's go talk to Alex. I love y'all so much. Okay, bye. I think I slid. I'm going to start by asking you where you're from.
So I'm from New York. I've lived here essentially most of my life. I was actually born in Europe. I just don't necessarily say that because it was so short-lived. I don't feel
Right.
have the justification to say that, but technically I was born in actually Romania. I lived there for like 3-4 years of my life, and then I came to the States.
Oh, wow. Okay. Wait, so you live in New York?
Yes, I live on Long Island right now, but I'm planning to move soon, so that's me a change up.
King, I live on Long Island.
Do you actually? Okay. So there we go. I could have came in the studio.
I mean, I guess I would know, but how does New York treat you as a trans guy?
Honestly, I feel like New York is awesome about it. But see, like this is a conversation that I feel like it's so nuanced, right? Because like I'm aware, like I have a beard, I've been transitioned for 12
Mm,
years, I'm a bigger dude. So I feel like it depends, like who you ask to. Like I really don't
that's true.
necessarily have trouble wherever I go, to be frank. So I feel
Mhm.
like but overall, am I grateful on a personal level? Absolutely. I feel like, I get treated with respect wherever I go.
Good. I love to hear that. Now, how long have you been on hormones for?
So I've been on hormones for a long time. I am definitely one of the privileged early younglings that were able to go through it. So I started my transition when I was 12.
Oh, wow.
But when I started my transition, it was a pretty thorough and long process. So I didn't go on hormones right away. I had at least when I transitioned, it was a bit more of a lucrative process. So I had to see two therapists, get both their confirmations of, for lack of it, like gender dysphoria,
Mm,
and because even at that age, I was nervous, and I feel like a lot of people struggle to admit that, especially when you're transitioning younger. That it's okay to be nervous about it. It's normal. Like it's a massive I would say I was about to say lifestyle change, but it's a lot more than that. Obviously it's a massive conclusion to come to. And I,
right.
I I myself wanted to make sure, hey, is this for real? Like, is this serious? Because I was self-aware. I was young. I didn't know if it was a phase. I was like, let me just go see professionals and see what they gotta say. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. And
Hmm.
so I saw two therapists. From there, I was put on a hormone blocker for a very long time. So I was put on a hormone blocker for 4 years before I was allowed to start testosterone when I was 16. And then from there, I was able to get my top surgery at 17. So I socially started my transition 12. And then I don't, some people count and don't count hormone blockers. That was like 13. So
Wow.
yeah.
That's dope as hell. Okay. A lot of people have opinions on hormone blockers. They think that, you put a
Yes.
kid on hormone blockers, they're going to grow up looking like some sort of freak, and I think you're living proof that that's not necessarily true.
Thank you. Yeah, I think the topic around hormone blockers is definitely like controversial, and I stand a little bit different from people in the community where I'm not necessarily agreeing with people that say it's bad, but I understand where they come from in the sense of they just don't understand. And
For
it
sure.
just comes down to, obviously, you don't ever want to be aggressive about it or violent with for words or physically. But I think, having that compassion to, instead of immediately attack people that just don't understand, just try and show
Mhm,
that compassion, because that's what I try and do. And it makes a really big difference of being like, hey, listen, I understand, like, that sounds really bad, but
mhm,
actually, wouldn't you want to, like, if your child, for example, is going through extreme depression, like, wouldn't you
mhm.
want to help your child without damaging them? That's or if they change their mind later down the road, like, I feel like hormone blockers is a great, almost, compromise, for lack of better terms, where the child isn't necessarily immediately jumping on hormones, but they also have something that, if they really do follow through with it, it's like a little safety net. That's all it is.
I completely agree with you. I've been saying that for such a long time, and I don't think I've talked to somebody who's actually been on hormone blockers.
Yeah.
I
I got very lucky. It was very difficult, and that's another thing people don't understand. It is not easy to get on hormone blockers. I'm lucky my mom, her background is a prosecutor, so she understands law very well.
mm,
A lot of people don't. Again, I have had a lot of things lined up for me in my life that a lot of people don't. And it's not fair that just because things lined up for me that I have that access, because my mom knew how to work the laws, right? Or the insurance company. You know, uh, I was turned down at first by the insurance companies, but she really pushed it, appropriately where it made it happen. So
that's
even
great.
the hormone blockers in themselves are, at least when I transitioned, I can't speak for others now, was very
Mm.
difficult.
Right? Do you think that going on hormone blockers like saved you from a lot of pain from what puberty might have caused you?
Yeah, I definitely, my top surgery results are really good. I have absolutely no visible markings that I am a trans person, honestly, at least like in public. I mean, obviously things change when you get more personal, but if I'm
Mhm.
just out and about in real life, like at the beach, you would never know.
Right.
And and it shouldn't really come down to that or matter, but at the end of the day, we're very visual creatures, and
Mhm.
I definitely think that it would have made a big difference, at least for me, if if I did have a lot of development in, through the biological woman's, puberty. So
Right.
again, that's why the conversation gets tough, because I understand people just want their kids safe, and I
Mhm.
understand that, and it comes from a really, like, good place. But
Mhm.
then I think at this point, unfortunately, both sides have become so aggressive about the conversation. It literally can't go anywhere because both sides are barking. Like, I think both sides need to take a step back and be like, "Hey, listen, let's just show some compassion." Like, it's not like, I don't know how to say it other than it isn't normal. Like, it isn't normal to, no one wants to feel this way, right? It is a
Mhm.
big thing. So both sides need to understand that it is a big thing, and that's all right. But let's talk about it and, like, be civil.
Facts. Yeah. I For the fucking 15th time, I've said this in the past like 5 episodes, but I got reposted on Libs of TikTok.
Mhm.
And it was a clip of me saying that exact same thing, that
Okay.
like, people who have gone on hormone blockers I haven't seen anybody that has regretted it. Like, it just makes puberty for them, like their natural puberty or whatever, like less painful, and it makes their lives easier. And that's all I said. And everybody came for me. Libs of TikTok and all its little fucking followers came for me when I said that. And I was like, you know what? Everybody lay off. Like, I think the bottom line with that argument is, how about we just worry about our own kids? But no one's ever gonna do that.
Yeah, I think, because I agree with you, and I think that's where it gets a little bit messy, because again, no one's going to listen to what you have to say if the execution's wrong, right? So, and
Yep.
but again, like, that comes from both sides, and like, I would consider myself someone pretty moderate, I guess. Like, I kind of stand somewhere in the middle, and like, but I
Yep.
respect a lot of people's opinions, and I love to hear them, because I know unfortunately, my experience is very unique, and a lot of people don't get to experience the transition I did. So, and
Mm.
I'm very humble about that, or at least I try to be. So, I listen to the people that are super far right in what they have to say, and I listen to people that are super far left, and like, what do you feel about it? And again, I think bottom line, if there was just a little bit more compassion and empathy and seeing the human behind everyone, that would go a long way, for everyone involved in this conversation. 'Cause at this point, it's so fueled, it's crazy. Because outside of social media, like, I don't think I talk about me being trans ever. Like, literally ever. Like,
Mm.
I have, I wear a lot of hats in my life. Like, I'm a trans guy, yeah, but in person, I'm more of a bodybuilder. All my friends, most of my friends are straight people, like, just not LGBT. They don't even bat an
Mm.
eye. Some of them vote Republican. Okay, like, whatever. I don't necessarily agree or disagree, but that doesn't mean we can just agree to disagree and then just, have mutual things in common. And I
Right.
think that's where it's gotten to, where you have to agree on everything, otherwise you're a terrible person, you know?
Right. No, I agree on that 100%. Can I ask, do you I mean, I guess
You can ask me anything. I am so honest, and I will not take anything, like, in a certain way.
well, I was gonna ask, like, do you prefer to live your life like that, like not being so open about being trans? But then I was like, I mean, I don't. Besides online, I don't talk
S
about being
mhm.
trans either. Like, I'm not like on the streets, like I'm trans, everybody. So like, I get it.
Right. I think you know what it is? I think bottom line, I always feel it's a detail about me. I don't necessarily see it as a defining factor,
Mhm,
encompassing factor of my life, my decisions. I would never be like, well, I'm not going to do that because I'm trans. Absolutely not. And no one should ever do something like that. And I
mhm,
would, I always, or like that's kind of always been my thing. Like I would say I'm a bodybuilder and I happen to be trans because at least to me, that's the point of transitioning. It shouldn't be something that consumes your entire world. Um, and again, that's where it gets messy because a lot of people, at least in my opinion nowadays, it's like that's what it's turning to. And I'm like, no, like that's fine, embrace it, love yourself, but you're more
mhm,
than that. Like, you don't have to be stuck in that label
mhm.
because you can wear so many hats.
That's facts. I agree with you. I think in the beginning of my transition, I pushed the whole trans label away as far as I could and wanted to be stealth everywhere I went. And then I hit a point where that mindset was making me hate myself and like not love the fact that I'm trans. So then
Mhm.
I got into like a phase where I was trans, trans, trans all the time. I'm so proud to be trans. And like I still am, but like I think it's important to be proud of that side of you and like embrace it as much as you can, spread that joy, and then maybe like find a happy medium between being stealth and being trans all the time.
Right.
You know what I mean?
100%. And you know what? I think you bring such a fantastic point up that it really changes, right? Like
Mm,
I resonate with that because there was a point in my transition where I needed that. I needed the community. I needed to be very loud about it. But and like that's what people need to understand. It's a process for us just as much as it is for everyone else in our lives. So, if that's what you need, short term, that's great as long as it doesn't obviously impede long term. But yeah,
right.
you bring up a great point. Like that's something that it's like everyone kind of changes throughout their own process. Like even people I know in my personal life, like they've changed their sexualities because they've come to realizations, and I don't frown upon that. Some people frown upon
Right.
that. I'm like, listen, you know, like it's everything's fluid, and like we need to just kind of accept that.
Right. 100%. What's life if you're not like willing to change and explore, you know?
Right. Exactly.
100%. Now you said you started puberty blocker or you knew you were trans at like 12 and then you started puberty blockers at like 13.
Yeah.
So if you came out as trans at 12, how long did you know from like a very young age that you were trans?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I would say I started realizing I wasn't normal. I would say I'm like trying to think of a better word. I would say I realized I wasn't your normal kid when I was around 8. prior to that, I feel like everyone's just a kid, right? Like, and nothing's even
Mm,
gendered. Like, I feel like
mm,
first off, you have no growth of any sexual organ, so like everyone's just a cardboard. Like
true.
everyone's just a kid. So I think it was kind of at the age of like 8 to 10 when I when they start separating kids in school by your sex, like that's when I started realizing, oh, people see me as a woman, and that's when I got really uncomfortable, because before that I was your typical like I was your classic textbook like trans kid, I guess. Like I, not to stereotype, but I was into the very masculine things. All my friends were
Mhm,
guys. Um, and it went past that, right? Because I never dawned on me to realize people perceive me as a woman. And that's what people don't understand. It's not about gender expression. It's not about what you wear or what you do. It's that like deep social integration that is
mhm,
uncomfortable, and it causes so much uncomfortability that and this is what I'm about to say. This is, I know, super controversial, and I'm okay with that. I'm not necessarily saying I'm right or wrong, but I do think it's a mental disorder because it causes physical and emotional pain to the extent you need medical intervention. It's the same thing as depression. Things ADHD,
mhm,
depression, autism, all these things. It doesn't make you a low functioning person as long as
mhm.
it's recognized and treated, right?
Yeah.
So that's how I see it. It's a mental disorder that I reckon it came on to me in my life at a very young age, and I went from being a very outgoing, super social kid to completely being withdrawn. Like all I did was play video games, like the typical like Skyrim, all that stuff, because I liked being the guy in the thing, and like that was my only way to do so.
Mhm,
And I realized early on too, it wasn't my sexuality. Like I came to the conclusion that I was interested in women like around the same time, like when you start like looking at girls and guys and like, oh, he's cute, not even
mhm.
sexually at that point, just like cute, like whatever. And
Right.
I realized it wasn't that pretty early too. I was kind of like, no, like it has nothing to do with me thinking girls are cute. I don't want girls or guys or anyone to see
Mm,
me as a woman. So yeah, it was but I didn't understand that. Like I couldn't vocalize it. And it wasn't actually until I came across Aiden Dowling, and it's funny because now we're friends, and I love him. He's such a fantastic guy, and I'm so grateful to be his friend now. But it wasn't until I came across a video of him talking about it, and he wasn't even talking about it in a way that was trying to persuade, or he was just saying like, "Hey, this is what I go through." And this was like his old OG stuff. And I was like,
mhm,
wow, it felt like he was finally taking the words out of my mouth. I was like, that is exactly what I feel. I can't believe I'm not the only one. And then from there, I told my mom first because I didn't have friends at that point. I was so isolated and antisocial. I was like, Mom, I want you to watch this video, and like I think this may be what I'm going through, but like I even told her I want to make sure, like I don't know how you'd feel about me maybe like going to therapy or something, talking to a professional, and like obviously that's what I did. But
mm.
yeah, like it was kind of all at once for me.
And how old were you when you showed your mom that video, do you think?
I was 12.
Wow. That's a lot to process for a 12-year-old.
Yes. It makes you grow up very
Damn.
quick for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. That's so cool. I had Aiden Dowling on. He was, like, my first guest who, like,
Oh yeah.
had a good amount of followers, so I fucking love Aiden. He's so dope.
He's so supportive, and again, just someone that he's willing, no matter how the communication is given to him, he always just responds with so much like grace and class. Like I really like
Mhm,
Aiden.
mhm. He's so well spoken too, like,
Mhm,
he's so wise. Like, I would
mhm.
turn to him for anything. Like, I love that man.
Exactly. Mhm,
There was something I wanted to say. Oh, when you were talking about it being a mental disorder, I do agree with you, and I do see how that's like a controversial take. I think in the past, like, I don't know, when you watch like transphobic people make content about trans people, whether they're trans or not, their one thing is, oh, it's a mental illness, it's a mental disorder. And I
mhm.
don't think that, at least not many of us on this side of the table, are saying that it's not a mental disorder. But as you said, like, you treat it like you would treat depression or any other mental disorder like that. And it's like, Yeah, I guess myself, I see it as more as I did have a mental disorder. I did have a mental illness, and now that I've been on hormones for 7 years and got the surgeries, I don't feel mentally ill about it anymore. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because it's not causing you that extreme,
Right.
like, issues. Yeah. No, and I listen,
Yeah.
and again, I totally see where you're coming from, and I agree.
Right.
I think my only not necessarily issue with that, but the only thing I could see being problematic with it when it comes to just getting the treatment is so background. I used to be a financial advisor. I had to get my life insurance, health insurance, licensing. I had to get a lot of different things and
Mhm.
open my eyes up to a lot of things on how things work, at least in the
Mm,
States. And the
mhm,
only problem I see happening with that for us would be if you don't consider it a mental disorder ongoing, then a health insurance company could easily come and be like, "Hey, so if you're good, why am I paying this for you?"
mm.
You know what I'm saying? So it doesn't. It's like
I'm
it.
mentally ill, I swear.
No, but like I'm being like because at the end of the day, they're
Yeah.
going to provide health services. So if you tell them, "Hey,
Mm,
I don't have an issue anymore," they're like, "Okay, great. So we'll pull the plug, right?"
mm.
That's where I think
I
the
wouldn't want that.
issue, right? So it's kind of comes to like I think it would be best for the community to actually embrace the term and just take it away from people that use it in a negative way, right? Because, like, yeah, I 100%, I think a lot of people that are transphobic use that as like a negative thing. But
Mhm.
in essence, then again, they're calling any mental disorder negative and a bad thing. Like, what are we in the 40s? Like, a lot of people have mental issues. Like, let's be real.
Right.
Look, okay, like especially after COVID, there's a lot of mental disorders. So,
Mhm.
like, I think
Facts.
the community should reclaim that. And I would be like, you know what, you're fucking right. And then it's me crickets. What are they gonna say?
Mhm.
Be like, yeah,
Right.
you're absolutely right. And that's exactly why I need my monthly dose of testosterone to stay fucking sane. Does that
Mm.
make sense?
Yeah, no, 100%.
No, no, no.
I
Like
think
that's what I would say to them. Sorry.
does that make fucking sense to you? No, yeah, I do agree with that. I didn't think of that aspect. I think, a lot of people are very, what's the word? They don't believe in mental health, which is the dumbest fucking thing I've ever heard of in my life. But with being trans, I think the mental health aspect of it, they're so intimidated by it because it's the only mental illness, whatever, that they can see. Does that make sense? Like you can't
Yeah,
necessarily see if
it
somebody
physically
has
manifests.
depression. Yeah,
Right,
like it's the only one that's kind of in their face, I guess, and they're intimidated by it, which is, oh no, like fuck you, it's my life.
right.
um, there was something else, something about you coming out at a young age. I don't
There's so
know.
many questions around that.
I think it's dope as hell. I've only had maybe one other guest who came out around that age, like that young. And you said it forces you to mature and grow up a little bit faster. That's like insanely true. Now, obviously your mom, I see, was pretty
Pivotal.
uh yeah, and like supportive, obviously,
Mhm.
because you went on hormone blockers and stuff, right?
Yeah.
Um, was there anybody in like your family or your friends, your life at all that gave you a hard time when you came out?
Um, I got very lucky with my family. My family was very supportive. My mom and my dad were supportive. My grandpa, who I was the most nervous about because he was a veteran in World War II, like, very
Mm,
tough guy. My parents grew up in communism with my grandparents. He had to hunt to literally feed like really, really tough guy, been through a lot. I was nervous to tell him.
mm,
But even when I told him, he didn't quite understand it or grasp it, but he was like, I always wanted to have a grandson. And that
mm,
really like touched me because it goes to show there shouldn't like it's not necessarily about understanding it fully because it is kind of crazy. It is fucking crazy. Like it's people that aren't trans aren't going to understand. There
Mm,
is some aspects of it that, like you said, they're tangible and intel. Like explaining gender dysphoria to someone is very difficult if you never experienced it. Same thing as depression. You can't if you never experienced medical depression, you're not going to understand what that feels like. So
mm,
it's not necessarily about it wasn't and my grandfather understood it wasn't about understanding what I'm going through. It was about realizing at the end of the day I'm still his grandkid. And I think that's where people like kind of like just lose touch in that. It's
yeah.
one thing if you don't and I would go as far as to say if you don't want your child to transition, by all means power to you. That is your child. I understand because just like the trans community and the certain demographic are saying, look, like, hey, like, don't like we want our kids to transition young, then you have to give that same respect and grace to the other side that say, well, I don't want my kid to transition young, but at least give them some type of leverage. Like, fine, you don't want them to go on hormones and stuff like that. I understand it's scary. It's a big thing. It kind of feels like the death of the kid. I get that can happen for people. Yet don't don't bash your kid. Like if your kid, especially at like 12, 13 years old, they need you. They need you to love them. And if like how can you expect a kid to love themselves as they grow up if you don't set that example? Because you need to set that example first. And that's where a lot of I think broken family and households happen is like there's just no again, I keep going back to this word compassion, right? So if you I always fortunately was raised by example by everyone in my life, and I'm very grateful for that, and a lot of people don't get that. So my grandpa just showed me compassion, and he kind of stayed out of it because he wasn't really sure how to feel about it, but he didn't put me down over it. He didn't make me like you're crazy. That doesn't
Mm,
you don't ever want to why would you ever tell your kid that? I just don't understand that. So I got very lucky with my family when it comes to my friends and school. Again, it was social at first, so the first thing I did was kinda just, like, cut my hair. I always dressed very masculine, so that didn't really change. It was that pretty much stayed the same. And then from there, I told my close friend group first. My name was actually Alexandra, but no one ever called me that. Everyone always called me Alex. So they'd be like, hey, like, what do we call you? I'm like, just Alex. Like that. I tried to make it also easy for other people. And I think that I gave them empathy. So if they messed up at first, I wasn't immediately like, she, don't say she. Like I gave that same empathy and compassion back. I was like, hey, listen, you've known me for 6 years as a girl. I know it's gonna
mhm,
take you a sec. Does it feel good? No. But like it's like you kinda like have to move and think above that, think big picture, right?
mhm,
So I
mhm,
I tried my best to be very understanding and patient with
mhm,
people around me because I wanted to give them that grace. And I think because of that, I had a lot less backlash because I wasn't aggressive myself about it. There was people that were still messing up my pronouns like 6, 7, 8 a year in. But every time they did it, they realized because I wasn't acting aggressive, at one point they're like, like they just naturally stopped doing it because they felt bad, literally, you
right.
know? And especially the more people started calling me he, they felt like the moron because they were the only one being like she, and then it's like kind of like awkward silence.
Right.
So,
Yeah. They're the odd one out if they're the only ones who are wrong.
right.
Yeah.
So I just kind of approach in that case, and I answered questions open and honestly. And this is another thing. Again, I understand it can be very invasive. Like we get very invasive questions as trans people all the time. Like, what's down there? What is sex like with you? Like, like really, like things that you would never ask a normal person. But
Mhm,
I I still answer them because maybe like when not without details, I'll answer them and be like, but hey, listen, moving forward, maybe don't ask that because I'm super comfortable to answer that, but there may be people that aren't.
mhm,
And again, I would do that. I did that all my life. Like I even at that young age, I had guys and girls ask me some questions that were a little bit invasive, but I answered them because it's almost like I'm trying to think of like a good analogy. I don't know. It's like if an if like an alien came on Earth, like we would have so many questions that were invasive, right? Because you've never seen someone like that before. So I don't think it comes from a place of maliciousness. It's more
mhm,
like a genuine curiosity, and they don't realize it's kind of weird to ask. So I never was like immediately like, "Hey, don't ask that. that's weird. I was
Mm.
just like, I would answer very vaguely, and then be like, hey, that's not necessarily something I want to answer in much more detail. I hope you're all right with that. And they're like, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Don't worry, my bad. So yeah,
Yeah, 100%.
I didn't have much issues.
Cool. I feel like I kind of was the same way with the inappropriate questions. I think as time went on, I was like, okay, guys, enough. Stop asking me these fucking questions. But at the start, I mean, you're right. I think you could tell though who's genuinely curious and just isn't thinking
Yeah,
like that it's going to hurt you and who's like maliciously asking. Cause I've had people
of
like
course.
maliciously ask me and that shit's not right. But I do agree that like people just aren't thinking and they're genuinely curious. It's what we do. Humans are just very curious. But again, I you could tell the difference for sure.
Mm,
The way you're describing how you've dealt with certain things that most people deal with, I feel like is the way that a good majority of us trans people handle things. Like we're not so like in your face, get my pronouns right, or otherwise I'm gonna have a mental breakdown in this store right in front of you. I feel like that's kind of the way trans people are made to look when in reality we're like, "Oh my god, no, like I get it. Like you've known me for 10 years. You're allowed to screw up and I'm not going to yell at you." You know what I mean? And I think it's important that there's people like you who are like, "Hey, like I'm not doing that at least like I show compassion to the other side because I want compassion back." I think that's super 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 important. So I appreciate, your honesty
oh,
about
thank
it.
you. I appreciate it.
Of course. Of course. Um I want to get into your business a bit. You're
Yeah,
a
sure.
fitness coach, and I think that's so cool, so dope, so dope. Also, you're huge, dude. I was stalking you on Instagram before, and I'm like, damn, how do I get like this man? So
Thank you.
tell me about your business a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So I started competing or getting ready to compete in bodybuilding when I was 16. So, excuse me, 17. Like I literally got top surgery and I was like, all right, like let's do it. I was like
Well,
very quick about it because I always knew I was actually a musician growing up. I was super into music. I played like guitar, bass, drums, jazz, a cappella group, like all that stuff. That was me. And then I finally got my top surgery at 17. I was like, wow, I'm super skinny. I was barely 100 pounds. I was like, you know what? That kind
mhm,
of like kicked me into gear to be like, okay, I want to like be confident in my body now. Like it's time, seriously. Um,
mm,
I'm a very type A guy, very, very all in or all not in. So I started going to the gym and that quickly developed into getting into interested into bodybuilding and competitive bodybuilding specifically. From there, I learned of Bev Francis Powerhouse Gym, and like it's like the East Coast mecca of bodybuilding, and I got my junior's license. And every day after school, I would drive,
mhm,
and I would do it every single day that I trained. And that's how I got into it. And from there, I was like, all right, people started seeing my progress. I was like, hey, and I got really great influences from like big bodybuilders like Sadiq Kadzovic, Arash Bar, Jay Cutler, like really big guys in the industry, and they're like, "Hey, dude, like you should consider competing. Like, you're putting on good size." And I was like, "You know what? I would love to. I don't know if I can, honestly." That simple fix. I talked to the owner, Bev Francis, which is Bev herself, and Steve Weinberger, and I was like, "Hey, can I compete, or am I going to waste my time? Because I don't want to do all this work just to be turned down." And they're like, "No, you
mhm,
can compete. What's the problem with that?" It wasn't even like it didn't even like take a second to think about it. I was like, okay, great. I went to look for a coach. I couldn't find a coach that was willing to work with me. And it wasn't necessarily because of moral issues, just because they had no experience. They're like, listen, dude, like I've never worked with someone trans. It's messy. You have an endocrinologist. There's a lot of moving pieces. So
mm,
I'm going to say no because I just don't know how to handle you, which I think is a super responsible and respectable answer. And I think
mhm,
that's when I realized I was like, huh, okay, maybe in the future, as I get more experience in this, I'm going to consider helping out other trans guys because it was a nightmare for me to find a coach, at least back then. I found Jason Theobald. Shout out to him. Awesome guys. I don't work with him anymore, but he forever changed my life, and I'll always say that. He was my first coach. We worked together for 5 years, and only reason why I stopped is because I just at this point can coach myself, honestly. Um, and from there, um, he kind of kept mentioning, like, you ask really good questions. You're very articulate and detail oriented. Have you considered doing this yourself? And at one point, I was like, you know what? Yeah, I'll try it. So I went under a mentorship under him, did that for like a year. I got my certifications. And from there, I started taking on clients, and I started small. And then from there, I kind of, on a business level, split away from Jason just because I wanted to do very specific things differently. My whole family, again, is either in law or business. So I had some good ideas running my mind. And I was like, why don't
Mhm.
I wanted to build a team? Like, that was my long term goal because I love competitive bodybuilding. That is my thing. But that's not necessarily every trans guy's thing. So if you come to me and you're like, I like powerlifting, I'm gonna be like, I can't help you with that. So, you know, I have a guy on my team
Mhm.
now, Elliot, awesome guy. He's a powerlifting world record holder. Like, that's the whole idea that no matter what you want to do with us, there's someone on the team that is actually experienced, done it. That because it's also, I think, just like tattoo artists have a lot of tattoos to understand where the client's coming from. I think it's
Mhm.
important that your coach has direct experience because it's really easy to tell someone that's 4 weeks out from a bodybuilding show, you'll be fine, just stick it through. But if you've been through it yourself, you know those 4 weeks are fucking hell. So I think everyone on my team at least has done it themselves, walk the talk, is certified, and they specialize in something. It's not just like I'll help people that want to lose weight. Like, no, like what are you specific? Like, Dominique, she was a professional and competitive gymnastics. And, I don't even know the term. She was in gymnastics. So if you're
Mhm.
interested in calisthenics, where it's more at home body weight stuff, I suck at
Mhm.
that. She's great at that. Max on my team, he was a chef. He worked in restaurants. He also is into fitness. He makes most of the meals, honestly, because I eat like a dog. I literally eat ground turkey, rice, and mustard in like a metal dish, like a dog. So I know no, I'm being serious. So I literally get like anyone I've ever dated, they've always like every single time I start eating, they would make some type of comment about like dog orient. It's just because I just don't care enough. So, but I know that was a weakness of mine because for a bit, for like the first couple, like I would say 2, 3 years, the biggest complaint I had from my clients was like, "Yo, dude, loving the results, but these meals are whack," you know.
Mhm.
And I like listen. At the end of the day, everyone in their business can be better. So it's like, okay, this is clearly not my strong suit. So let me find someone that it is. So that's
Mhm.
how it kind of started, though, and that's where we're at now. And I'm actually in the process of building my own app. So I'm currently partnered with someone. Nothing again, like I
Wow.
don't want to say this in a way like to throw shade at anyone. Um, but I want to make my own. I'm in the process actually with my partner Jared of making. He's another coach on the team. Let me clarify. Of just we're just making an app because every single app that I see, there's like something missing. Um,
Mm.
and I just don't want anything missing. And I think a lot of, for example, like um, and again, this is not no shade to any specific platform. I think they're all great in their own way. But
Mhm.
for example, one platform is better for online coaches, while some platforms are better for in person. Or one of them takes a lot from you, like money wise, and then it's just really difficult to scale. Like if you really want to
Mhm.
build a team and like because and that's where people I think get the wrong idea because I'm one person. I literally cannot work with more than a certain amount of people. It's physically impossible, but
Mhm.
my goals and what I want to contribute are literally bigger than me because I physically can't do it myself. So that's why you see or at least good businesses grow because in order to actually be able to do what you want to do, you need a team and you need to grow it. And like that's what I have people on my team like Jared that I just mentioned. He's also an incredible coach. He's actually the second. He's the coach on my team with the second most clients. Beforehand, like I was in finance, he was in insurance, and he hated his
Mhm.
life, and it like completely changed his life. And now he actually feels like he's doing something that is like making a difference, not making people miserable. And I think it's both sided. It's not just better the lives of the clients, better the life of the people that want to provide for those clients. And I think a lot of apps don't really focus on that. It's just about which, by the way, I think it should be a lot about the clients. But if you actually take care of the coaches too, those are the ones responsible for the clients. If the coaches are miserable, then the clients are going to be miserable. So, for example, something like getting your certifications is incredibly expensive. Like, no one can just like pick up and be like, I'm going to go get certified to help people.
Mhm.
That's a lot of money for most people. Like, it's easily over $3,000. Not a lot of
Oh,
people have
wow.
$3,000 just laying around. Yeah, it's expensive.
Damn.
So
I didn't know that.
right, and, like, one thing we're trying to do is we're trying to partner with NCI, which they stand for the National Coaching Institute. They're a recognized certification group. It's kind of in the same cluster of organizations as, like, NASM, ACE, all that stuff. Um, we're trying to no, I don't say trying, we're finalizing, like, pretty much doing like a discount for people, right? So like if a coach would work on my app or really my team's app, let me be more specific. We're going to be able to give them a massive discount on that certification. And quite frankly, we're not even taking commission out of that. And I would sign a piece of paper on and say that because at the end of the day, again, I'm speaking totally truthful here. It's still benefiting us because we're able to provide that value that you're not going to find on other apps. But the bottom
Right.
line is you're going to have 70% off of that 3,000 plus dollars that you'd usually have to pay. So
Mm,
even down to just stuff like that, like take care of the coaches, take care of everyone, not just one side of it.
right.
So
100%. Um, I wanted to just make sure I have it correct. Uh, are you a coach for strictly trans men, or do you go outside of that?
so I would say I primarily focus on trans guys, yeah, because that's where my specialty is. And it's not like it's not one of those things where I'm like against working with like other people. Like Jordan Polak, I don't know if you know who he is. I worked with his brother for a bodybuilding show, and he placed really well for his first show. And he's just your typical straight white dude, like whatever.
Mhm.
I have
Right.
no, I'm never gonna turn someone down, but
Mhm.
realistically, I am going out of my way to work with trans people, if that makes
I
sense. Like
like that.
those are the kinds of people I'm being like, hey, I want to coach you,
Right.
but I may have someone
And
come to me that isn't
right. And trans men want to be coached by other trans men. If
right.
if I was looking into it, I personally wouldn't want to be coached by a cis man because I wouldn't trust that they know what I need. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it just also comes down to coaching in general is so much more than about like your meals and your check-ins because like every coach does that. I There needs to be some type of intuitive understanding, right? So
Mm,
like I can have like you need to read between the lines a little bit, and especially if someone's trans, it helps if the coach is trans because you can kind of read between the lines, and be like, okay, this might be I don't know gender dysphoria. It's totally
mhm,
possible. It's happened many times to me where I'm like, all right, let's kind of like navigate through this.
mhm,
I'm seeing clear signs of gender dysphoria from this. Like, let's talk about it, right? Like that may be something that someone is just actually gonna feel more comfortable to talk about with me.
mhm. Now, I was gonna ask you, kind of fits in. Do you think there's like a difference between what challenges trans men face in the fitness world compared to cis men?
I think they're different. Okay, so what I mean by that is I guess beforehand, can you be a little bit more specific, like in what terms?
I guess in coaching somebody, like, or I guess in how they how if
Respond.
they need to eat more or less, or
I would say big picture, it does come down to person by person, obviously. So,
mm,
I mean, you can have some, you know, biological guys that their metabolisms are absolute shit, honestly. Like they may have Hashimoto's. Hashimoto's is a bad autoimmune disease that attacks your thyroid. If you have
mm,
Hashimoto's, it's terrible and it affects more biological women than men, but
mm,
guys can still have it. So it
yeah,
it gets I would say trans guys are more difficult, but not because, for example, someone that's, let's say, like freshly on testosterone, it's a lot more complex because at the end of the day, you have a biological woman just freshly starting testosterone, which is the most powerful steroid. It's a steroid at the
right,
end of the
yeah,
day. Like
mhm,
that's like you gotta like it's I've actually talked about this before. This is slightly also controversial, but I'm just being real. Is
Mhm.
there's actually a because obviously not in my case because I got lucky with hormone blockers, but most people lose their menstrual cycles through their transition and through the testosterone therapy. You're
Mhm.
essentially mimicking menopause if you really think about it. Because if
That's
you
true.
literally Google what is menopause, it is your period stopping. That is what it is. So you're taking someone usually in their 20s or 30s and they're experiencing something that's biologically supposed to happen to them in a later life early. So you have all those things coming like that's how
Mm.
many trans guys have you heard be like, I don't know, I started testosterone, I started gaining weight, but like not even in a good way. I don't know why. And you're like, I thought testosterone was supposed to make me jacked and like I can eat whatever I want. What is going on? That's why. Like, people don't
Mhm.
consider that. Like, it's so much gray area. And then it also comes down to how well do you absorb that testosterone? Because again, biological guys, they're naturally producing that. So yeah, their body's gonna absorb that splendidly. Their receptors are primed. You take someone that's biologically a woman, it really varies. So it's not necessarily like trans guys can't accomplish their goals or they can't do anything really. It's just more as the coach, like it's a lot more variance of what could happen.
Mm.
So with at least the guys I've worked with, it's literally like, okay, one of three things is gonna happen. With a trans guy, it's like I gotta really, really watch them because their bodies, depending how deep or early into their transition they are a lot more sensitive. And then, oh my god, trans women, it's even worse. You're taking estrogen and putting that into a biological man. I don't God bless them. I don't know how they do that. Like literally being prescribed estrogen, which gives
Mhm.
you unfortunately all the negative things, stress, anxiety, like, mood swings. It's crazy.
Mhm.
Like I can't even imagine. That's why I say like when people like if some, obviously there's detransitioners and there's going to be people that it's a mistake and we need to recognize that and like I'm not pushing that to the side, but you
Mm.
know, it's one of those things that estrogen is such a strong, and so is testosterone. Both of them are so strong.
Mhm.
Um, that's why I don't know. I feel like like you. I feel like we've both been transitioned for so long. I'm kind of out of touch with how the transitioning process is right now. But
Mm.
if for example it's gotten way shorter, I can understand why people say, "Hey, hold up, let's like go back to when it was like a process to start." Because I've heard stories where people can just like jump on hormones, and that I would have to disagree with because they're so strong. Like you can't go back. It's either direction really, but
Mhm.
especially testosterone. So because of all the androgenic effects. So and just being a coach, and I actually I'm trying to get one of my clients to talk about it with me sometime. But he started testosterone and now he's going through a lot of health issues. And like he's not he really wants to follow through with his transition, but it's causing really bad side effects. Like his receptors are not handling it well. So
That sucks.
yeah, and it sucks, right? Because like that's so shitty. Like because he
Yeah.
really is. He's a trans guy. Like,
Mhm.
he's 6 months in, and he has to come off. Like he has to come off, and that's
Mm.
where another conversation opens on passability, where it's like I agree. Like there is a level that it's important, but we have to be mindful of these case scenarios of this guy. Like this poor dude, he has to jump off. He doesn't have a choice. So it's
Mm.
just so like everything about being trans is so complicated.
Mhm.
And it's kind of like perspective, right? Like half glass full or empty. I think
Right.
it should be something that is it should be something that's studied and analyzed from a really analytical perspective, like very objective. Be like, wow, we're doing something never done before. Literally,
Mhm.
like, yeah, people transition, but it was socially like to really go through the entire transition like we are nowadays. It is a new thing, and I think on a social level, on a biological level, we're shaking things up. Honestly, like that's the best way to put it. So
100%.
yeah, I'm sorry, I'm dragging your question out so much. I would say
No, it's okay.
it's just more variables. A lot more different things can happen.
Yeah, and to go on what you were just saying about how complex the trans experience can be and how like we are shaking things up, it also I would like to just because we're on the topic, I would like to see more of like it people go into depth on how all the different stories, you know what I mean? Because obviously we're not monolithic. Every single trans person has a different story. Where yes, like we're most of the time it's around the same, the same thing, but as you just said, like somebody who um has to come off of hormones for health reasons. I know somebody who had to do the same thing. Like that's also how you know that this shit is not a choice because like even though some people have to come off, they still don't want to. Like even though their health is telling them that they have to, you know what I mean? That's just my tangent about it. But um I did want to ask you where walk me through your process a little bit if somebody because you're do you get most of your clients from like Instagram and stuff like that?
Yeah, yeah, I can walk you through. So pretty much the way we do it is most of my stuff is off of Instagram. So if you are interested in coaching me, I don't do in person. The reason why I don't do in person is quite frankly, there's not many trans people on Long Island. Like
Mhm.
yeah,
You're right
there
about
isn't.
that.
So yeah, I do most of my stuff online. So if you're interested in coaching, you just click the link in my bio. From there, we have a form, and the point of the form, and people think it's really actually so important. And it asks you basic questions like, what are you trying to do? Gain muscle, lose weight, and it asks you a bunch of questions. From there, once you fill out the form, I used to reach out myself, but it got to a point it was taking away from my current clients' time, and I felt it was unfair because I would rather I take calls all the time with my current clients that work with me. I want to put my
Mhm,
energy that way, not people that are just interested. Because obviously, if you're working with me, you're working with me. So now
mhm,
I have an onboarding guy. So his name's Phil. He's awesome. He's also part of the community. So I have Phil. He does the initial reach out and he pretty much will go over price points because that is also complicated. It depends on the coach. It
mhm,
depends how long you want to work with the coach because we do scaling discounts. It depends. We always do trial months too. So if someone's interested in coaching, we don't immediately have them be like, okay, you're locked in for 6 months with a monthly payment. We're like, hey, listen, try the month with your coach, see how it goes. Quite frankly, both the coach and the client need to see if they want to work together. And then from there, the coach will reach out and be like, hey, Luke, so we've been working about three weeks together now. Do you want to continue with coaching? Have you been enjoying this? Do you have any questions? And then from there, they'll truly decide, hey, okay, this is 6 month, we'll work together. It's going to be this price point, and then in 6 months we can revisit this conversation. Because at the end of the day, we can only, again, all work with so many people at once. So we don't do month to month because we really want to work with someone that wants it. But that's how you see the best results, because I don't want someone coming into this being like, this is a 1 month solution. Like, it's not. If you got your body into a point that you are so miserable, I want you to take a step back and ask yourself, how long did it take you to snap and be like, enough is enough? Okay, now we're gonna need to reverse. We need to walk backwards. It's not going to take
mhm,
as long, but it's not going to happen in a month or 2 months or 3 months for that matter, right? If
mhm,
you're really unhappy with what you look like, and if you want to lose 50, 60 pounds, like, we have to set realistic expectations. And a really good way we qualify that is by being like, okay, we typically do 4, 6, and 9 month commitment periods. From there, obviously a lot of people recommit, but that's where our starting point. I have clients like Luke. Speaking of Luke, one of my longest term clients, his name's Luke, and he's been working with me for like 4 years now. So it's awesome. I like
Oh
to build
wow.
long term relationships. And then yeah, so that's kind of the process. Does that kind of make sense how we do it?
Yeah, 100%. I think that's really cool.
Cool.
I now with your clients who are trans guys, um, how do you like? Because I feel like with trans guys, me, this is how I felt about fitness for a long time in the past. Like I was always afraid to go to the gym or afraid to get a fitness coach because maybe not a fitness coach, but like a fitness coach that wasn't trans, maybe. But like I was afraid to go to the gym and work out in front of people because I thought that it would be so clear that I was trans and that I didn't know what I was doing. And I don't know, did you ever feel like that in the start of your fitness journey? And do your
Yeah.
clients ever feel like that?
Definitely. I feel like that's a very universal experience, right? And that's kind of just goes down to like the spotlight effect. Like we always think that everyone's watching.
Mm,
I definitely experienced that. I would say what really helped me was having a training partner. Like not going alone really helped me at first. Um, so that really helped kind of break that mental block for me. And even like getting a coach, that was super scary for me because I was like, oh, like I thought about it. I was like, all right, well, we'll see how this goes. Um, but it's almost like I kind of came to this conclusion where I was like, you know what? Let me give people a chance. Like, let me. I'm right now projecting my, for lack of better terms, insecurities and gender dysphoria on other people. I'm like, let me give them a chance. Like, I'm just assuming people are going to be an asshole to me if they're a coach. I'm assuming that if I go to a gym, everyone's eyes on me. And actually, it's funny you mentioned this. I just recently made a post about this, but from my experience, the bigger the guy in the gym, the nicer. Why? Because, no, seriously, because it takes a certain level of education in the topic to get to a certain size. It does. You don't just magically wake up and you're 250 pounds of muscle. It just doesn't happen like that. You know,
mhm,
I'm nine, and that's the exaggeration. I'm 6 years deep right now into competitive bodybuilding, and I'm still like nowhere near the size of some of these guys. Like it's really remarkable. And again, I went to Beth Francis. I've seen some big dudes, Mr. Olympias, and they're so nice and they just you can tell they're just there and they love what they do, and a
mhm,
lot of them are actually very mellow. And I kind of just say, because usually what are the guys that you're concerned about in the gym and their opinion of you? It's the bigger guys because you respect them because you know intuitively, okay, those are the guys to respect. But
mhm,
realistically, they're so hyper fixated on what they look like, they don't even notice you because and this, it's not even an insecurity on their end. It's like because they're so disciplined, they have a certain expectation of how they present themselves in public. So they're gonna be super hyper fixated on on that. Be like, okay, I know I'm one of the bigger guys in this gym, so do I look big right now? Or am I embarrassing myself? Because it's embarrassing for them to look small. It's even more embarrassing because everyone upholds them to a certain expectation, or at least in their minds. So it's funny, it's almost like both sides are doing the same thing. You have a trans guy upholding this expectation that everyone around them is gonna notice they're trans. And then you have the
mhm.
big guy, the trans guy so scared of, upholding this expectation that everyone's gonna be noticing that they look small today. So
Everyone's just
yes,
scared of other people at the end of
I
the day.
I think humans are actually very I think a lot of people are very predictable, and that's not a bad thing. But I think
No,
there's a
yeah,
lot more commonalities between us than we realize.
100%. Yeah. Now, where do you want to see your business slash career in like 5 to 10 years as a fitness coach?
Oh man, that's a great question. I would say I want to do this as long as I can. Honestly, it's definitely a lot of work. I work, and I don't say this to like stroke my own ego, but I do work a lot. I take my time with every client. Um, I would love to build my app to a place that, again, it's not just about bringing up the clients or the coach, but bringing up both. Like I want to get to a point because really, like coaching changed my life for the better. It gave me so many opportunities in my life that I'm so grateful for, and I want to be able to extend that. And I think there's nothing more fulfilling than actually providing opportunities for people. And if I can do that, that would be great for both sides, clients, coaches, and then obviously work with my own guys. But realistically, there's so many trans people out there, and I want to keep being able to do something. So I want
Mhm,
to do that. Um, I've considered long term many things. Again, my education background is as a financial advisor, so realistically, I've a conglomeration of things. I do want to get into real estate. I do want to get into. I mean, I already do like trading and stuff like that on a personal level outside of coaching, on a very, again, personal level. But I think
mhm,
big picture, I want to show trans guys, again, don't limit yourself to that. Like I'm a bodybuilder. I'm also a coach. Like I do this trade. I do trading. Like I'm into real estate. Like the best thing you can do is be successful. If you really want to, like that's at that point. If you're successful, you won't care what anyone has to say. Literally, I promise you. And if you also notice, anyone that's successful has nothing negative to say, right?
Mm.
You'll never catch again, I'll bring up some guys from Bevs, Sadiq, Arash. I have never once seen them go into someone's comments and be like, "You're so small, you look terrible," because they they're at peace, they're fulfilled with themselves. They know that they achieved what they wanted to, and a lot of times when people are so negative and aggressive and mean, it's because they're not fulfilled. So I think at the end of the day, everyone should just really focus on b- finding that personal, emotional, physical, financial fulfillment, and whatever that means to you. I'm a go big or go home kind of guy, so I have a while, but yeah, it's a mix of things. I even want to get into like nonprofits. I'm a big cat guy, so I want to do nonprofits for cats, nonprofits for trans guys or transgender individuals in general, for that matter. So I'm all over the place with my ideas, honestly.
That's so fucking cool, dude. I think what you're doing is really important. I mean, I know that there's other trans guy fitness coaches out there, but I love what you're doing, and I'm
Thank
really
you.
excited for you to make an app. And I think it's really important because a lot of us trans guys who aren't into fitness, I think it's a very, very daunting thing for us because I've danced with the fitness stuff, and I find myself to be like scared, like even outside of being trans, I'm scared that if I get too into fitness, I I'll like hyperfixate and I'll like be so obsessed with it that I won't have a life because that's just who I am, and I think that's how a lot of people feel.
Hmm.
But the way that you explain it and the fact that you're trans and you know what it's like to be trans and go through all the struggles and whatnot, I think it's important because a lot of us are scared, and seeing somebody else do it is everything at the end of the day. You know what I mean? I think it's
Definitely.
super important.
Yeah, and I think just to add on to what you just said is, and kind of how we were talking about before about, different phases of someone's transition. Like there's some times where you don't want to talk about it at all. Like you're self hardcore, like you just you it's like pushing it to the side, and then you go to the other extreme where it's everything about you and everything about your personality. Like you shit the trans flag, like everything you do is trans. And then you finally kind of find that like happy middle ground, right? And I think that's just almost like going through it's like we're literally going through puberty all over again. I don't think people
Mhm.
understand that. I almost think it mimics the phases of puberty because you finally reach that age and maturity in your puberty. You're like, all right, I'm good.
Especially because I feel like, obviously, if it was all trans people at the gym, I wouldn't have a problem. But what scares me, because I have trauma from little cis men being mean to me, that's what scares me. So I feel like that's like section for me for like if it was a bunch of LGBTQ people in a chat or something on the app, that would be so dope. I would feel so comfortable talking about fitness and stuff like that. But I don't want to do that in front of cis men because I'm afraid they'll judge me. You know what I mean? And that's something I
Right.
obviously have to get over and like overcome. But
Right.
to each their own.
Definitely. And I think, again, it's upsetting, like, that you feel that way because like my best friend is just a dude, and he actually knows more about me than anyone. And again, I have that unique experience that, and it's just because again, Long Island doesn't have many trans people, but
Mm,
it's sad that it's come to that. Like again, and him and I don't even agree on everything on a political level, but we don't care. Like he's still my best friend. It's like almost being like, yeah, he's an idiot. He's kind of stupid sometimes, but I love him. Like
mhm.
why can't we
Right.
go back to that? Like it used to be like that. I don't know what happened where you can't just agree to disagree on both
Mhm.
sides. And it's like why are we like it's gone. I honestly really think COVID messed a lot of people up. Like we lost a lot of social cues.
At the end of the day, doesn't matter like if we don't always see eye to eye on everything, as long as like there's love and respect there. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of
Exactly.
the same thing I always say about blood related family. Like, uh, you know, love like that shit doesn't mean anything to me as long as it just has to come with love and respect. Like I
Mhm.
love my mother to death, but if she didn't support me and love me as her trans son, then I wouldn't be here, and that's fine. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, it would break my fucking heart, but like, and that doesn't mean my mom has to be all gung ho trans either. She's not. It's just one day she saw me as her daughter, and then the next day started respecting me as her son, and that's all I needed. I don't need her to go to Pride for me or anything like that. It's just as long as you can fucking look at somebody with love and respect and not be a dick to them, no matter if your opinions differ, then who cares at the end of the day? And you're right. I think COVID definitely took that away from people. I would agree. I would
Yeah,
agree.
because I think it was a lot less interaction and people lost that. Like it's actually a skill. To be compassionate is I don't think it's not necessarily natural for us
Mhm.
because on a primitive level, it is we have primitive tendencies. We're very tribalistic. If it doesn't look or sound or speak the way we think it should be, we can get aggressive. Like it's actually a skill to be compassionate, and I just hope people take the time to try and develop that.
I agree. I love this episode, Alex. I think you're absolutely fucking dope. I think you're doing really,
Oh,
really cool
thank you.
things. You should be very proud of yourself.
Thank you so much,
Of
Cody. And
course.
I'm more than happy to support your podcast. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
I'm flattered.
Of course. I'm flattered. Oh my god. Um, Now before we go, where can people follow you?
Yeah, so you can follow me at Alex Tlinka. It is literally just my name, my last name, just to spell it out because no one can ever spell it. It's Tilinca, and my first name's Alex. So just literally my name, nothing fancy. It's social media, Instagram, and then I just recently restarted my YouTube. It's really like give me a second, guys. But if you type my name up in YouTube, it should come up as well too.
Period. All of those things will be on screen and in the description below. Go follow Alex. Go support Alex if you're looking for a fitness coach. Go
Thank
support
you.
my boy Alex because this was a great episode and hell yeah. Now go follow me at HRT Podcast on TikTok and Instagram. I post almost every single day. Join my Discord, subscribe to my Patreon. There will be bonus content from this episode on my Patreon, so go check that out. And that's about it for this week. Make sure you turn on my post notifications. I post podcast episodes every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I drop after dark videos every Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I stream video games every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And that's about it for this week. I love you all so much. Alex, thank you so much again. This was a great episode.
Thank you, Cody.
Of course, I will see you guys next week. Bye.